Welcome to Recap King. In this video, we will explain A Silent Voice. This movie tells the story of a bully who sought to beat boredom in the cruelest ways. When a deaf student transfers into his class, he and the rest of his class thoughtlessly bully her for fun. However, when her mother notifies the school, he is singled out and blamed for everything done to her. Sincerely regretting his past actions, he sets out on a journey of redemption to meet her once more and make amends. Can he make amends and become a better person? Let's find out in this heartwarming story of A Silent Voice. A Silent Voice begins by showing a 6th grade elementary school student named Shôko Nishimiya, who has just transferred to a new school. At her new school, Shoko is in the same class as a student named Shôya Ishida, who is known to be very nosy and often pranks his friends. When Shoko introduces herself in front of the class using a notebook, which she calls a communication book, Shoko's classmates, including Shôya, are surprised to find out that the girl is actually deaf. At first everything seemed fine, until finally, their homeroom teacher decided to give the students 3 minutes of extra lessons every morning before starting lessons to learn sign language, which was a way for them all to communicate with Shoko. However, this is met with opposition from a student named Naoka Ueno, who openly says it in front of the teachers. Even so, a student named Miyoko Sahara and the other students don't seem to mind the extra lessons. One day, the teacher asked Naoka to read the text from the textbook, but because of her poor intonation when reading, Naoka was reprimanded by her teacher. Naoka then felt annoyed when her teacher did not reprimand Shoko at all when the girl read the text with the same bad intonation. When it was Shôya's turn to read the text, the boy deliberately read the text by imitating Shoko's intonation, which earned him a reprimand by his teacher. Since then, Naoka incites his other friends to stay away from Shoko. When Shoko was alone, Shôya approached the girl and threw a handful of dust in Shoko's face. Shoko's one and only friend is Miyoko, and they are always seen together. Seeing their closeness, Shôya intends to hurt Shoko's feelings by writing a sentence on the blackboard stating that Miyoko has left their friends because she is friend with Shoko. Shôya then pretended to delete it when Shoko came, as if he didn't write it down. However, Shoko's reaction was completely unexpected. Instead of crying or being sad, Shoko wrote thank you and smiled at Shôya. Day after day, Shôya always bothers and pranks Shoko. Even Shôya deliberately took off the hearing aids worn by Shoko, causing Shoko's ears to bleed and hurt. Shôya also throws away Shoko's hearing aid. One day, when he came home from school, Shoko approached Shôya and his friends while writing an apology, and saying using sign language that she wished Shôya could be friends with her. However, Shôya still refuses to be friends with Shoko, and then throws Shoko's communication book into the pond. But for some reason, Shôya also took the communication book from the pond. The next day, Shoko doesn't go to school, and the principal comes to their class to investigate reports from Shoko's mother that Shoko's hearing aids have been lost or damaged 8 times in the past 5 months. The principal suspects that Shoko is a victim of bullying and asks the students to confess. Because no one dared to confess, their homeroom teacher kicked the blackboard and told Shôya to stand up. Shôya finally stood up and admitted his mistake. But the boy also said that it was not only him who bullied Shoko, but also his other friends. Hearing this, his classmates suddenly felt disapproved of Shôya's accusations and they agreed to be hostile to Shôya. Meanwhile at home, Shôya's mother, who already knew about her son's actions, then invited Shôya to meet Shoko and her mother to apologize and replace the hearing aids that had been removed or damaged by Shôya, which were quite expensive. Despite his reluctance, Shôya finally complied with his mother's wishes and met Shoko's mother, and advised him not to bother Shoko anymore and be a good child. The next day, Shôya caught Shoko who was wiping his desk with a piece of cloth. Shôya rudely told Shoko to stop, but Shoko replied with a smile. Feeling annoyed, Shôya then pushed Shoko quite hard. Because everyone's patience has a limit, Shoko, who had been trying to survive the bullying she experienced, then vented her anger at Shôya by pushing the boy to the ground. Shoko said that all this time, she had tried to be kind to everyone who bullied her, but why were they still bullying her? After that incident, Shoko no longer attends school and their homeroom teacher informs that Shoko has transferred to another school. Shôya finally realized that all this time, his desk had always been scribbled with insults and curses by his friends who were still annoyed with him. A few years later, Shôya is now a high school student and diligently takes sign language courses. One day, when Shôya was at the course, he accidentally bumped into Shoko. Shôya then called the girl and said her name. However, upon hearing Shôya's name, Shoko immediately ran away in fear. Shôya also chases Shoko to return Shoko's communication book and apologizes to the girl using sign language. Shôya feels very guilty and regrets everything he did to Shoko a few years ago. Shôya then expresses his desire to befriend Shoko. Seeing Shôya's sincerity, Shoko finally accepts his offer. The bullying that Shôya did to Shoko a few years ago turned out to make his life change drastically. Shôya was shunned by his friends. Even when he was a student in high school, Shôya was still ostracized because of his reputation as a bully. Shôya is now a depressed loner, unable to look other people in the eye, and imagining the X on the faces of those he refuses to interact with. This had made Shôya intend to commit suicide, but he then changed his mind at the last minute and decided to move on with his life. One day, Shôya sees a student named Tomohiro Nagatsuka, who is forced to lend his bicycle to a bully student. Feeling pity, Shôya then offered his bicycle to the bully student so that the bully would not take Tomohiro's bicycle forcibly. Because his bicycle was taken, Shôya was forced to go to the course on foot. On the way, Shôya found a promo coupon for a pastry shop. Shôya picked it up, went to the pastry shop to buy some bread, and went to Shoko's class, intending to give the bread to the girl. However, upon arrival in front of the class, Shôya was confronted by a girl named Yuzuru, who did not allow the young man to meet Shoko. After returning from the course, Shôya met with Tomohiro, who returned his bicycle, and since then, the two have become friends. The next day, Shôya came back to Shoko's class with bread, but Yuzuru always got in front of the class and didn't give him permission to meet Shoko. Yuzuru even claims to be Shoko's lover, which makes Shôya quite surprised. But then, Tomohiro suddenly appeared and scolded Yuzuru. The two then got into an argument that caught the attention of the people who were there, including Shoko. Shoko saw Shôya's presence in the midst of Yuzuru and Tomohiro's commotion. But when the two looked at each other, Shôya suddenly felt embarrassed and immediately left. Shoko then chased Shôya until they came to a bridge, where they were finally able to chat. However, suddenly, Shôya accidentally dropped Shoko's notebook into the river. Shoko rushed into the water to get her book and Shôya followed the girl to save her. Unbeknownst to Shôya, Yuzuru secretly takes a photo of Shôya jumping into the water and posts it online to take revenge on him, which ends up getting Shôya suspended instead. One day, Shôya was asked to pick up his niece Maria at school. Maria then told Shôya that someone had fallen asleep in the slide. Shôya then went inside to see the person, who was none other than Yuzuru, who had run away from her house. When she wakes up and sees Shôya, Yuzuru reveals that she was the one who spread Shôya's photo on social media and then apologizes to him. Shôya apparently didn't mind this at all, and instead invited Yuzuru to his house to eat together. That night, Yuzuru quietly left Shôya's house and walked in the pouring rain. Shôya then followed her, and gave an umbrella to the girl and walked her home. During the trip, the two of them talked about Shoko, and because Shôya thought that Yuzuru was Shoko's lover, Shôya told the girl that he would not bother Shoko again. Arriving at a bridge, they separated, and Yuzuru revealed through sign language that she was not Shoko's lover but her younger sister. Yuzuru's mother, who was also Shoko's mother, looked at Shôya. The woman rushed to Shôya and slapped him because she was still annoyed with what Shôya had done to Shoko a few years ago. After that, Shôya and Yuzuru became friends, and Shôya and Shoko's relationship became even closer, where they often spent time together. One day, Shôya and Shoko meet again with Miyoko, their classmate from elementary school who is friends with Shoko. Shôya then left Shoko and Miyoko. While on the road, Shôya accidentally bumps into Naoka, who is handing out promotional coupons for a restaurant where Naoka works part-time. The next day, Shôya takes Tomohiro to visit the diner where Naoka works part-time, but the girl hides when she sees Shôya's arrival. When Shôya came home, he met Yuzuru, who was visiting his house and playing with Maria. Shôya then left a cat head purse to Yuzuru to give to her sister. Yuzuru gave the wallet in the evening. One day, Shôya was surprised by the appearance of Naoka, who immediately sat on the back of his bicycle, while on the other side of the road, Shoko was standing carrying the wallet that Shôya gave him. Seeing Shoko on the other side of the road, Naoka immediately approached her and did her bad habit, bullying Shoko by forcibly removing Shoko's hearing aid, and intends to throw it away. But this time, Shôya immediately stopped Naoka and returned the hearing aid to Shoko while apologizing. One day, Shôya and Shoko met somewhere, where Shoko then gave Shôya a gift and tried to express her affection for him by telling it directly. Because Shoko is not good at communicating verbally, Shôya also mistakenly responds to Shoko's words, Suki, which means to say I like you, and thought Shoko said Tsuki, which means the moon. Because she was embarrassed and annoyed, Shoko finally left there. Meanwhile at school, one of Shôya's classmates from elementary school, Miki Kawaii, walks up to Shôya and asks him what he thinks about her new hairstyle. The girl then introduced a student named Satoshi Mashiba to Shôya, and the three of them eventually became friends. A few days later, Shôya takes Shoko to an amusement park with Yuzuru, Tomohiro, Miyoko, Miki, and Satoshi. There, they meet Naoka, who asks Shôya to buy her takoyaki. While buying takoyaki, Shôya meets his classmate in elementary school named Kazuki Shimada, who used to be Shôya's close friend, but then distanced himself from Shôya after their bullying of Shoko was discovered by the principal. It turns out that their meeting had been planned by Naoka, who wanted to reunite their friendship. Naoka then invites Shoko to ride the Ferris wheel. But before that, Yuzuru left her camera with Shoko. The next day, Yuzuru goes to Shôya's house to show the video recorded from her camera when Naoka and Shoko ride the Ferris wheel together. In the recording, Naoka voices her hatred for Shoko and blames the girl for creating a rift between her and Shôya, as it turns out that Naoka is very infatuated with Shôya. Even though Shoko is heard repeatedly apologizing, Naoka still doesn't care, and even has the heart to hurt Shoko. While at school, Shôya and Miki get into an argument when the two discuss the bullying that Shoko experienced years ago. In the fight, Miki accidentally exposes Shôya's past as a bully to students who don't realize it. Shôya finally took the initiative to gather all of them, including Shoko and Miyoko, to explain the problem and clear up misunderstandings. But in the end, they still blame each other, so Shôya just sits down and blames himself for everything that happened. However, Shoko could understand the situation Shôya was in, and as usual, the girl always carved a warm smile at Shôya. Not long after, Shôya found out that Shoko's and Yuzuru's grandmother died recently. To cheer them up, Shôya took them to the countryside. Yuzuru looks cheerful again, but not so with Shoko, who still looks sad. Not only mourning the death of her grandmother, Shoko also feels sad and frustrated to see Shôya, who is now shunned by his friends again, and Shoko blames herself for everything that has happened to Shôya. After that, Yuzuru asked Shôya to help them prepare a birthday cake for their mother. At first, their mother did not seem to like Shôya's presence, but after seeing the closeness of her daughters to Shôya, the woman finally melted and accepted Shôya's presence. On the following night, while attending a fireworks festival, Shoko suddenly excuses herself from returning home under the guise of finishing her homework. Yuzuru then asked Shôya to take her camera at her house. Arriving at Shoko's house, Shôya was shocked when he found Shoko standing on the balcony, who is about to end her life, because she thought that she was always causing trouble to the people around her. Shôya managed to grab Shoko's hand and pulled her back. However, Shôya instead fell into the river below. Shôya was rescued and rushed to the hospital but fell into a coma. Yuzuru and her mother then came to see Shôya's mother to visit Shôya and apologized to Shôya's mother for Shoko's actions that had caused Shôya to fall into a coma. Meanwhile elsewhere, Naoka vents her anger on Shoko and doesn't stop blaming the girl for everything that happened to Shôya. Shoko's mother, who saw the incident, then slapped Naoka, but the girl returned the slap and the two got into a fight, until finally, Shôya's mother came and broke them up. Hoping to help Shôya, Shoko then goes to Shôya's friends to apologize and explain her and Shôya's situation. One night, Shoko dreams of receiving a farewell visit from Shôya, which immediately wakes her up and worries about Shôya's condition. Shoko then sneaks out of the house, then runs to the bridge and cries. At the same time, Shôya awakens from his coma and runs to the bridge, where he finds Shoko also there. Shôya then again apologizes to Shoko and asks the girl to stop blaming herself. Shôya then admitted that he had considered taking his own life, but then decided against it. Holding Shoko's hand, Shôya then asked the girl to help him survive, and he would also help Shoko to solve all the problems in her life, which Shoko agreed. When Shôya returned to school, everyone looked at him and talked behind his back. However, Shoko never let go of her hand on Shôya to support him and stand by his side no matter what. Shôya finally reunited with Tomohiro, who expressed his longing for Shôya. Not only that, Shôya also reunites with his friends, including Naoka, and realizes how much they still care for him. Naoka still doesn't seem to like Shoko, but Shoko doesn't mind it and thinks of Naoka as her friend. Shôya, along with Shoko and his friends, then go to the school festival together, where Shôya discovers that he can finally look other people's eyes again, when he imagines the X on their faces disappearing. Looking around at his family, friends, and all the new friends he made Shôya burst into tears, knowing that he could finally atone for his past mistakes and move forward to become a new person. The film ends. If several films with the theme of bullying focus on the lives of bullies, then this animated film is an exception. A silent voice tells the story of a bully who tries hard to make amends and become a better person. Even though Shôya had intended to commit suicide because he was ostracized after he bullied Shoko, but Shôya then gave up and tried to ask forgiveness from the person he had hurt, and tried to change himself into a better person and do good to everyone. Although his efforts are not easy, and even threaten his own life, with strong determination and sincerity, Shôya is able to atone for all his mistakes to Shoko and become a better person.